Hi, and welcome to PowerViews. I'm Dan McDade, your host and president of PointClear. PowerViews is dedicated to finding solutions to some of today's toughest marketing and sales challenges. And I'm delighted to say that my guest today is Tony Jaros, who is a sales and marketing thought leader with about 20 years of experience. And he's led the research function at SiriusDecisions for more than 10 years, overseeing the creation of content covering demand creation, product marketing, marketing communications, general strategy, sales training, hiring, and client service. He's also advised a number of organizations, and the list is on his LinkedIn profile. I'll tell you just a few of them: American Express, BMC, CSC, MasterCard, BEA, Symantec, and First Data. Tony received an MBA with concentrations in marketing and management from New York University and a Bachelor of Science in Journalism, which is where my wife's education is, and from Northwestern University. Tony, welcome to PowerViews.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for taking time to be with us today. I'd like to just start out and ask, if there's anything in particular in 2012 that either has happened or hasn't happened that surprised you, relating to sales and marketing issues.
I think it really always depends on a company-by-company basis. I see some very, very positive things continuing to happen within the marketplaces that we serve, and we continue to see some things that lag behind. And especially as we as an organization, we cover all that is B2B, sales and marketing, especially as we get outside the high-tech market, you see less development in terms of the relationship between sales and marketing. So whether that be in financial services, medical device, manufacturing, those companies typically have a much longer way to go when it comes to the alignment of these two functions than a lot of the high-tech organizations that we work with do. So that's always a surprise to see. I think it's also, it continues to be a surprise to me to see organizations buy a number of technologies in the space and not use them to their fullest. And that's often disappointing and due to a lack of process within those organizations that underpins those technology purchases.
I know that both at the SiriusDecisions Summit, which I was fortunate to attend early in May, as well as a follow-up in a lot of the blogs and a lot of websites, that there's a lot of discussion about the new SiriusDecisions demand waterfall. It's obviously there's quite a lot of work that's gone into that. I'm wondering, before just talking about it generally, if some of the new toys out there, like mobile marketing and marketing automation, although I realize that's not brand new, and social media, were kind of anticipated in that model, and how are folks, kind of responding to that? Do they understand what you've done, and what kind of feedback are you getting so far?
Well, I guess I'll answer that in two ways. Number one is I think the feedback has been largely very positive within the marketplace, and I think when you do something like this and you take something that is well known and in many cases well liked and you go to alter it, you always worry about what the response of your audience is going to be. And so we as an organization spent a lot of time debating, running through different permutations of this, and finally making some decisions on the changes that we want to make. And the one comment that I got fairly consistently, both at the summit and afterward, was this was not as scary as I thought it was going to be in terms of the changes, and that was architected by us. We didn't want to take a hard left or a hard right turn away from what we had done before, because we believe in the waterfall. This is an evolution of a process, not a complete change of the process. And I think most individuals who have seen this understand that. They like the changes in it. They specifically like the changes around calling out sales role in the waterfall very specifically, calling out teleprospecting or telequalifications role in the waterfall very specifically. So these are all things, it's not like we're sitting here in an ivory tower making this up. These are things that we saw within hundreds and hundreds of organizations that have tried to take the waterfall concept and make it a reality, either the good things that they've seen or the struggles that they've seen, and what we've tried to do is operationalize that. So in many cases, the changes that we've made should be really not that great of a surprise to anybody who really has lived and breathed the waterfall. The second part of the question is, in terms of some of the new technologies that we've seen and how they might impact. You look at, you mentioned mobile marketing. It's really funny because I just literally, before we got on Skype here, finished editing a piece on a survey that we did on mobile marketing, Right now, the companies that we surveyed, nearly 4 in 10 have not woven mobile marketing into any of their marketing activities, which is shocking. It's almost like we put our heads in the sand when we think about the way that we behave as business people versus in our personal life. Everybody's just mobile in their personal lives, and we think that that's not going to carry over and be the case in business to business. That's foolish, and what it means is most B2B organizations are far behind the curve when it comes to something like mobile marketing, and we really think that that's something that not only are they going to have to adapt to, but they're going to struggle with over the next several years.
Do you include, say, iPads and that kind of thing in mobile marketing? You talk about cell phones and tablets and anything, right?
Absolutely. Anything that you're going to carry around with you that is untethered to a wall, basically, is a mobile device, right?
Right, absolutely. Hey, just this is a good segue into a question that I have, and it kind of relates to the demand waterfall. And I think, and I'm not sure I'll say this right, but I think that SiriusDecisions can be credited for, really understanding and pushing the importance of inbound, as a part of the process. And I think the last statistic I saw, this may be dated, is that something on the order of 85% of opportunities are going to come through the web by 2015. Is that about right?
Yeah, we're thinking around 70% actually. If you look around the 2015 mark, will be inbound originated.
So it was interesting in the demand waterfall, because I think, and this is my opinion anyway, I think sometimes people get confused by saying that if that's the case, then all I really have to do is wait for opportunities to come to me. And I know that's not what you're saying at all, that the focus on teleprospecting, I think was a critical differentiator in the new demand waterfall. But what do you, I don't know if this is a good question or not, but how do you explain to folks how you see the balance between inbound and outbound marketing being impacted by what's going on today, and how is that likely to change over the next, say, 3 years?
Well, I think the reality is, and I think we have to accept this reality as business people, is many of your buyers, your customers, are looking at and collecting information about you long before they're ever going to engage with you. And the number of sources of information is only going to continue to proliferate. It's never going to shrink. And what that means is, if you are not in those places that your buyers congregate and collect information and able to either influence the information that's given or provide credible information of your own, you miss, at the very earliest stages of buying, your opportunity to be able to influence buyers. And that's a huge mistake, because what it means fundamentally is you're going to come late to the party. I always liken what's going on right now in business to business to buying a car maybe 10 or 15 years ago. If you looked on a website 10 or 15 years ago, you would never see a car company put statistics about its competitors against their own cars on those websites, what we call a comparator. Okay? Now, we know that there are many sources that you can go to publicly online to get that comparison information. B2C auto manufacturers got smart and said, you know what, if you're going to go somewhere else for that information, I might as well try to, number one, provide it to you here so you don't leave my property. And number two, that also gives me the opportunity to be able to spin that comparative information in the most positive way toward me as humanly possible, where that's not going to happen on a third-party site. So they now all have comparators on their websites. It's the same thing. It's adapt or die here, and they're going to go get it. You have to adapt to it.
Do you feel like companies should be looking at their enterprise and named accounts differently than what I sometimes call the great unwashed, but the huge, there's 100% of your market, but there's maybe 20% of the market that represents larger opportunities that really should be handled differently than the rest of the market? Do you see that as the case? Do you see that as consistent with what's in the current demand waterfall? How do you, what do you recommend to clients about how they look at different tiers or strata in their target market?
Well, I think this all comes down to, when you take a look at marketing, for instance, what's the role of marketing going to be vis-a-vis a global account that you have versus a territory account versus an SMB account, for instance, and through your channel. As you go down marketing, and you get into more of a volume play, marketing has the opportunity to source greater percentages of the pipeline and should be looking at what we call the create job as a core role that they're going to play vis-a-vis the performance of the waterfall. As you go up and you go to the very top of that pyramid into your global accounts, right? Very few accounts where you typically have a limited or group of salespeople that are focused on maybe one or two or three of those accounts. That becomes much more of an account-based marketing play where maybe the creation of leads may not be the alpha metric by which marketing is judged. And I think that with demand creation technology, marketing automation, everybody has been swept up by that and said, you know what, the major way that I can, as a marketer, create value for the enterprise is by sourcing a lead. And we know, number one, that the math doesn't work. Sales is still going to source a lot more demand than marketing is, even with marketing automation. And the fact that in certain tiers of your selling strata, that role, there's never going to be a volume play there. So marketing and sales need to adapt the relationship that they have with one another based upon the way that frankly, the sales force and the market segmentation is set up.
That kind of touches back on something we talked about at the top end of this, which is alignment. And one of the kind of pet expressions I have that is nobody ever built a statue to a committee. So unfortunately, if you leave the solution to the marketing and sales alignment, kind of problem or issue, if you will, to those in marketing and sales, you're likely not to get the kind of end result that you're looking for. So that somebody senior in an organization, really has to take control. And I remember a couple of years ago, you actually had a client who had been in sales, but had managed to kind of, harness all of the activity and pull it together. He ultimately became president of the company, and but it was by somebody basically saying something has to change. We have to do things differently. Do you feel like that there's a model for companies to improve alignment? How, if you're an individual in the company, you're out of alignment, how do you work toward getting in alignment?
I fundamentally think, and we see this all the time, if there is not an appetite for this at the upper reaches of a company, it really is limited in terms of the impact that it can make. I'll give you an example. Take service level agreements and demand creation between sales and marketing. We're seeing these much more commonly being set. But if a sales leader and a marketing leader, if the marketing leader won't commit to provisioning what the service level agreement says in terms of lead quality, or doesn't know how to do that, in many cases, and the sales leader will not hold his or her first line managers and reps feet to the fire to accept and disposition leads, then you're going to have a service level agreement that looks really nice on paper, but it has no teeth. And so the question that I always ask is, when we work with clients is, are you really going to put the teeth into this, and do you really understand what it's going to take to be able to drive this type of alignment? And the biggest thing that it takes in many cases is consistency. Is this going to be something that, for instance, we have a workshop, we walk out of the room, and then we forget about it 7 days later? Or when you start, for instance, to see that service level agreement 3 months later being violated regularly, are you going to measure and manage to that and make sure that that doesn't start to slip away?
And there's such an upside to that I was having this conversation internally yesterday. There's such an upside to that it isn't just a project or it isn't an event. It's really an ongoing process. And I think a lot of times it takes an outsider and an outsider's view to help keep the focus on all of these things. The entire process of the demand waterfall. It's hard for me to believe. It seems like it was just Christmas, and now all of a sudden we're almost halfway through the year. What do you recommend that folks look at right now? If you're in sales or marketing, and you're looking at, regardless of where you are in the year, what do you look at doing the rest of this year that might impact this year or might have some chance at improving the start of next year?
Well, I think to impact this year, in many cases, we're working with organizations that have highly complex sales cycles. So if you think about demand creation and lead creation, it's too late for you right now.
Yeah, right.
If you've got a 9 or a 12-month sales cycle, what marketing is going to do for you up at the top of the waterfall, for instance, is simply not going to impact the business in any major way to the end of the calendar year. You look at enablement, and that's really a key area. The problem, I think, always with that we've seen in many organizations goes back to what I mentioned before, is that if you get fixated on the only way that marketing is going to bring value to the business is in the creation or provisioning of leads, that's a lose. It's a loss for sales, and it's a loss for marketing. It's a loss for sales because in many cases that job can't impact your business in this particular year, to your point. On the marketing side, the math doesn't work for you. You have to start to look at jobs like enable, right? How are you going to better enable the sales force to be able to take good leads and get them to opportunity and to close? And then acceleration, formal initiatives between marketing and sales to target, in many cases, smaller groups of deals that are currently in process that share commonalities, common deal size, common vertical, common products that are currently, or solutions, services that are currently being looked at by the prospect, common stage that those deals are stalled in, to be very, very prescriptive with your activities and try to do things to be able to move those deals that have a hope to be able to impact your top line and your bottom line in the next 1 to 2 quarters. But it's not lead sourcing that's going to save you at this point.
Right. Hey, what have we missed? Is there anything you're working on now or anything that you would like to pass along to the viewers at this point?
There's 2 things right now for me since the summit. Number one has been the waterfall, and we've been taking companies through the waterfall to share with them in more detail the logic behind what we did and the specifics behind what we think is going to happen with the new waterfall. I did a couple of forums 2 weeks ago, one in Minneapolis and one in San Diego, where we focused on that waterfall. So that really is a big area of focus for us over the next 6 months, is to see organizations begin to put these new mechanics into place and then to be able to provide metrics to us, early stage metrics, just like they did in 2006 when the last version of the waterfall came out. So that's piece number one. Piece number 2 is our campaign framework that we introduced. We've been using this terminology for many years, but introduced our campaign framework much more formally at the summit. And what I'm really seeing, and it's encouraging, is organizations that are saying, you know what, this makes sense. This is a logical way for us, and also a more rational way for us to be able to go to market with fewer messages that are better supported, rather than more messages that are all over the place and scattered, that confuse both our buyer and our sales force. So I'm very keen to work with organizations and to watch organizations start to put this campaign framework in place, because it will not only align marketing better with sales, but it will align disparate functions of marketing together. So those, for me, are the 2 core areas that I've been working on very heavily with organizations over the last 3 to 4 weeks, and will continue to do so.
Tony, how can folks get in touch with you if they have a question or want to follow up on this discussion?
If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can contact me at my email address, which is tony.jaros, Jaros, at SiriusDecisions.com, SIRIUS decisions.com. And also, you can always visit us on our website, which is www.SiriusDecisions.com.
Thank you. I'm a huge fan of SiriusDecisions, and I'm a huge fan of you as a speaker and as a consultant and a researcher. I would encourage the audience to basically go out and Google your name and watch some of the things that you've got out there in addition to this PowerViews. So for now, this is Dan McDade signing off from another edition of PowerViews. Thank you so much, Tony, for joining me. I hope you all have a good day. Thanks for watching.